Good day, everybody, and welcome to episode 10, the final episode of season 1 of the Athletes of Canada Elite Sports Science podcast. Now, as this is the final episode of season 1, if you'll indulge me for a second, just to reflect back on this whole project and how cool it has been for me personally. When the idea first came to me, and by the way, it came to me like it was like a eureka moment, an epiphany, something like that, which is a whole other story. But at that time, not only did I have no earthly idea about the technology required or the equipment required to pull something like this off, I also knew none of the athletes who I'd eventually interview, save one, which was guest number 1. Rachel Hanna, marathon runner and registered dietitian, and my old personal friend. But the other 9 athletes who went on to make this so awesome, I had no idea who they were going to be at the time. And if I look back, if you'll indulge me for a moment, just to look back, I wrote down, this is the roster of the 9 people who I had no idea who were going to fill the slots to make up this podcast. Here's a list of their combined total accomplishments. You ready? They make up 21 separate Olympic Games, 8 Olympic gold medals, 3 silver medals, 3 bronze medals, 1 pro bodybuilder, 4/5 of the way up Mount Everest, the 3rd best timber sport athlete on planet Earth, and 1 Hockey Hall of Famer. Folks, I couldn't have dreamed to have such an incredible lineup. Which brings me to today's guest, the final athlete for season 1, episode 10, Catriona Le May Doan, who is another one of these athletes who I have memories of watching at the 1998 Olympics with my buddies in Newfoundland, watching her win a gold medal for Canada in speed skating and thinking this was so cool. And now here I am today about to sit down with her for the next hour and 10 minutes or so and talk about her amazing career in speed skating. So folks, with all that being said, it is with great pleasure that I present the final bio for season 1, the living legend, Catriona Le May Doan. Catriona Le May Doan is an icon of Canadian Olympics. She won the gold medal in the 500 meters speed skating at the 1998 Nagano Games. Then in 2002, she became the first Canadian athlete in history to defend an Olympic gold medal by winning the event again in Salt Lake City. She also owns an Olympic bronze medal in the 1,000 meters. She was twice Canada's flag bearer at the Olympics, has 3 honorary degrees, is an officer of the Order of Canada, and a member of the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame. Catriona Le May Doan, please tell us where you were born and raised.
I was born and raised in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And you know, all Saskatchewan people will say they bleed green till the day they die.
We might get back to there. Stick around, folks, for the end, 10 questions. You know 10 questions is coming by now. But anyway, I will stick to my usual format and follow up with the question, Catriona, why speed skating?
Oh my, that's a very good question. Why does a young girl in Saskatoon, when the winters are minus 30, minus 40, decide to go outside in spandex and only turn left? I just kind of fell into it. It wasn't from the upbringing of my parents. They immigrated from Scotland. They'd never skated a day in their life, but we just sort of discovered the sport and fell in love with it. No real answer.
Well, that is the answer.
Yeah.
And from there, we have, Catriona, an unbelievable story to unravel here with the success that you went on to experience in the sport of speed skating. But Catriona, if I may, I'd like to begin our story here, although the podcast is called ACE, Athletes of Canada Elite Sports Science. Catriona, I'm also a fan of art and the art of storytelling. So I'm going to take some poetic license here in the interest of being artistic, and we're not going to do the story chronologically. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to the year 1994, Catriona, and we're in Lillehammer. This is I'll give you a setting, and you tell me you finish the story after I give you the setting.
Okay.
Lillehammer, 1994. You're actually your second Olympics.
Yeah.
You've already been to one games, but this is your second time. And Catriona, I'm going to give you a date, February the 19th, 1994. Catriona, what happens?
So I'm assuming February 19th was my 500-meter race. That's how bad I am at statistics. That must have been my 500-meter race because that was sort of a
You,
real turning point for me.
you know where we're
Um,
going.
yeah, I do. Ranked fifth in the world, had won some medals earlier that year on the World Cup circuit, was known as one of the fastest starters. So in my mind, and actually that was a realistic goal going into the games, wanting to win a medal. Um, Ranked fifth in the world, that's not bad at all. Only 4 women in the world were ranked higher than me, and long track speed skating is not a sport where you have a round robin or heats and semis. You have one race. So 37, 38 seconds once every 4 years, that's what you're given. Paired against Francesca Schenk, who's ranked 4th in the world, also a fast starter. Great first 100 meters. And then who knows why, my skates slip out underneath me and I crash into the bumper. So I don't win a medal, and I ended up last at the Olympics. So lowest point of my sporting career, when I reflect back, I'm of the belief that whether things happen for a reason or whatever is put in your path, you are not given anything that's too difficult to overcome. Again, that's my belief. But what that did was it really forced me to reevaluate why I was doing speed skating, not who I was, a little bit of who I was, what my values were,
For
but
sure.
also, really why I wanted to do this. That's what it forced me to do. I've had athletes ask me, and I think this is important, not just from athletes, but in all different areas. Do you need to have a big failure or setback in order to eventually succeed? And I don't
I can't
believe,
wait to hear what your answer is. You don't
well, I,
believe?
I don't believe that you need that.
Sure.
I think whatever is put in your path, again, you learn from it or you choose to
Mhm.
learn from it. You can walk and go the other way, but do you end up learning from it? So it took me a lot of reflection to decide to continue, because understanding that, it's a lot of training and a lot of commitment to commit to another 4 years for 37 seconds. And I think that's where sometimes, I like people to really think about that. It's 37 seconds that I commit 11 months of the year, 6 days a week of training for that opportunity. And if you look at chances, I mean, they're not in your favor for that
No,
many
not at all.
people. So, but that's what that race taught me. It was tough, but would I be the same person if it didn't happen? I don't know. I can't answer that because it did happen. And so, I don't like the what ifs. When people say, oh, I wish that we'd done this. Yeah, that's great, but we didn't. So what now? And that's the situation with that race. That happened. What now?
So you referred to it. This is your lowest point in athletics.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, by the way, folks are wondering, Dennis, why are you starting with the lowest point? So we can only go up from here. But if that was your lowest point, Katrina, and you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned you're thinking about the future, like were you close to calling it a career?
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
because at that point I had about half of my sociology degree. I'd been going to school at U of C, and then we'd been going to World Cups, but I actually remember I had a full year class at U of C. And then we decided, before the 94 games, it was between the 92 and the 94. And again, that was 2 years, but that's when they alternated the summer winter.
Hmm.
Um, we were going to Europe for 10 weeks for training and World Cups, but we weren't coming back. And I had to pull out of my classes, but one of them was full year. And so when that happened, I was half done my degree. So I come from my dad was a professor of engineering. That's why they came to Canada. My mom was a pharmacist and ended up getting her teaching degree. So I'm the only one still currently in my family who didn't have 2 degrees. So, this was not a quote unquote normal path, and it's not necessarily a normal path.
Two Olympic gold medals, though.
Yes, but at that time, I didn't have that.
Not 2 Olympic gold medals, exactly. Yeah.
And so I had to really think about, do I continue down this path where in the next games I would be 27, or do I pick the,
more secure?
Yeah, more normal, more secure, safer. And I mean, for my parents, they were supportive either way, and they didn't push me. Trust me, if somebody had pushed me, I would have gone the other way. That's my personality. But it's not normal. And it's, and I mean, my dad paid my rent until the day I retired. So it's, not the easy path, my choice. But again, whatever I did had to be my choice. And I chose to continue. But that's where I really had to make some decisions.
Catriona, you got a great story, and that's where I wanted to begin the story. Because, like I said, no surprise, folks, no spoilers. It does get better from there. But let me keep going here with my poetic license and going out of chronological order, Catriona. So that was Lillehammer 94, as you phrased it. This is the lowest point of your career. You get to the grandest stage of them all, and you fall. But let's go back in time from there. Let's start from the very beginning, because part of what we try to do here, I'm very curious as to how a Olympic champion speed skater is built. And let's start right from the beginning. Like your earliest experiences in sport, Catriona, you talked about getting into speed skating. How old were you when you first started speed skating?
9, 10 years old. I mean, my parents, again, don't come from sport, but they put us in everything, and they allowed us to try.
So prior to 9 or 10, you did other things besides speed skating?
Yeah, I was actually ringette, and I did do both for a little while. Ringette, and I'm sorry to hockey players, and I had one ringette as children. I have one ringette player, one hockey player. Ringette creates the best skaters, and I'm sorry, that might do controversy. Oh, they can skate circles around hockey guys.
I'm loving it. We're getting to the nitty gritty of. We're only 5 minutes in, Catriona. We're getting.
Yeah, I'm stirring it up already. Controversial.
Yeah, that's great.
But that's where I came from. I came from ringette, and a little bit of. Okay, let's get a little philosophical. Regardless of what level of sport you go to, you always come back to grassroots, because now I play old lady ringette and old lady hockey. So it doesn't matter what you do, you come
it's interesting,
back
to
Tier 6, level D. Yeah. That's it.
Those were your formative years.
Yep, but I did other
Interesting.
sports. We danced. We did a bit of everything. My mom allowed us to try stuff, but her thing was, you try something, you do it for the year. Like, you don't do it half of the year and go, oh, I don't like this, I'm going to pull out. No, you've made a commitment. So that was my mom's, that was her sort of what you did.
Okay, so speed skating starts, let's say, around 10.
Yeah.
From what I understand, Catriona, and it's okay to brag a little bit too as we go here, because it's not bragging. This is science. We got to get to the truth. That's the purpose of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
You were pretty good at speed skating right from the start, right? You're winning like high level stuff, like young. Talk about some of that.
Mm-hmm. So I did do well at the beginning. When people say you're competitive, people didn't see that on the outside. So again, and I had a coach. So I talked earlier about if somebody told me to do something, I would go the other way. I am very driven inwardly. I'm very competitive with myself, which is not an easy way to be. I will say that. I'm not an easy person to be around, and I'm not an easy person to be on my own. Like,
it's very
I'm
interesting.
Not easy to myself. So I made Canada Games. I just turned 12. But again, Saskatchewan's a bit of a smaller province, but I was, it was neat to be able to go. And my sister actually was speed skating at the time, and she's 3 years older, and she was on the Saskatchewan team as well. But I had a coach who said, you don't have the right attitude and you'll never go far. Because on the outside...
I didn't know that. I did not know that part of the story.
I know.
You're talking about speed skating?
Yeah.
Really?
Because if I fell like in
Really?
a provincial race, I wouldn't show
You wouldn't
frustration or
show it.
anger.
But
Everybody's
internally, you're
always
feeling
upset
it.
with me. Yes, but
Wow.
I'm competitive with myself. People have this assumption that an athlete must be a certain way. People
Mm.
are all different ways. And I will tell you a secret is that an individual athlete is a very, very good actor. You often will not understand who that athlete is because you don't see the real person because they often wear a mask. And I think I learned to do that quite early on. But I was very driven because you're driven by perfection, and I wanted to see how close to perfect I could be. And so that was sort of what always drove me, which probably still drives me a little bit, which is not an easy way to be.
Hmm. I'm going off the cuff here, but you're saying so many interesting things. This is somewhat of sports psychology. Um, so if you are that way, internally driven, let's say, do you think that was Catriona? Did it have anything to do with your decision to pursue a individual sport as opposed to a team
Yeah,
sport?
for sure. I get very, very frustrated. I don't care what people achieve. I honestly don't care, but I don't understand when people don't want to see how good they can be.
Hmm.
But here's the thing, is that I know that that takes courage to do that, and it's easier to blend in with the crowd. So I get very frustrated when, even at my lowest level of ringette and hockey, I'm like, just skate back faster. Like when I know they can, I
Wow.
don't get it. Um, but
I don't either, to be honest. I've often used that line, Katrina, when I
yeah,
was coaching. The line that I came up with when I was coaching my son's hockey team. If
yeah,
you're here,
hmm,
you may as well work hard.
yeah,
Like you're
exactly,
here. You're here.
exactly. I
What's the
agree.
pro? Like just
Yeah,
you can work
I
hard while you're here.
yeah.
The
So
time will go by. Whatever you choose to do, you may
yeah,
you may as well work hard.
I coached my daughter's ringette, and that's what frustrated me. I didn't care. I didn't care what the score was, but I always thought, don't you just want to see how good you can be? Just push yourself. And there's a big difference between, as a coach should never motivate somebody. You need to motivate yourself. They can inspire you, but they can't motivate you. And so I was always driven, either inspired by others or motivated to just see how good I could be. And that's for sure why I chose individual sport versus team sport.
So interesting. Okay, let's keep trying to carve out a pathway maybe here, or at least a pathway that you followed to rise to the highest level in this particular sport. So you start, let's say 10, right away you get a sense like I'm pretty good at this.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us, Katrina, at what point in your memory do you start to use the word in sports science speak specializing?
Mm-hmm.
How old are you when you say I'm really now devoting a lot of time towards getting as good of a speed skater as I could
Mm-hmm.
be? Maybe not a ringette player anymore. When does
Yeah.
that happen?
Well, ring it. Yeah, I only crossed over with both for a couple of years, but then through high school, I always did track and soccer, and I am the example of why you should not specialize because I didn't specialize until
Okay,
23, 23, 24.
23.
Yes. So I
Put that in
did,
time. My math is not. You're in the
yeah,
Olympics
so
by that point,
1994.
so you're a two-time Olympian by that point.
Yeah. So what happened is, um, throughout high school, then I start making, again, I make the next Canada Games in 1987. So I'm 16 years old and I'm now making the junior national team and realizing that I graduated high school in 1988. I was 17 and then I made the national team. There was one I remember in my brain being a rebel thinking, what if I quit now? What if I didn't go do this? More for shock value, but I knew I wanted to do it. And that's sort of my, I don't know, my weird side. But I moved to Calgary and did that. Now, I'd always had a dream to do a summer Canada Games. And if I'm going to say first loves of sport, I would say track and field is probably a first love. And yet I'm not as good at it. And I'm a realist. So
But still pretty
in,
good.
it's still pretty good. But again, Team Sask maybe was a little, well, no, we had a strong team. So track and field for Canada Games is a bit of an older age group. So in 89, the Canada Games were in Saskatoon, but it was my first year of being in Calgary, and it was a lot, and at school, at university, living away from home. So in 1989, in the summer, I came home, and I talked to the track coach, and I said, I would like to see if I could qualify for Canada Games in 1993 in 4 years' time. So for the next 4 years, and actually 1 year 1 year after the Canada Games, what I did was I did speed skating and fully trained. And then I took 2 weeks off. And then in the summer, I did track and field. So my official coach was in Saskatchewan, but I was training in Alberta. And people might know the name. I mean, there were the old Mars Bars commercials, Michael Smith, the decathlete.
Yeah.
So I trained with Michael because I was doing multi-sport. So I was doing heptathlon. And I ended up qualifying for 1993 Canada Games. And I did that for about 4 or 5 years. And then after the 94 games, then I took a full big break, and then I just did speed skating. But I truly believe that that's why at 54 that I am right now, I don't have like major injuries, because I really developed, not just mentally, but physically. I had that diversity, and I had that sort of break.
Agreed.
And, specialization to me, I'm the example of why you should not.
So Catriona, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think it's so important. And actually, I knew you did that, by the way. I was hoping you didn't bring it up so I could sound smart by saying that I knew you were. So she kind of undersold it, folks. Canada Games, heptathlon. This is not speed skating. She's done a completely different thing. You're throwing things in a heptathlon. Like, it has nothing to do with speed skating. So
running, jumping, throwing. But it's also for people who are not the fastest and not the best at any of the events, but okay at all of them.
I think the operative word, okay at all of them. Like, I really don't want to undersell. Like, it's not the Olympics, but I mean, to compete at the Canada Games.
Yeah. I was proud of it.
Catriona, you should be proud of it. Like, that was an amazing thing. When I discovered that, I said, I can't believe she did that. and as you point out, which I think is so interesting, because this whole concept of specialization is one of my kind of pet projects, pet issues. The idea of early specialization versus late specialization. Like, you've been at the Olympics as a speed skater, and after that, you're doing the heptathlon.
Yeah.
I think it's as you very rightly point out, it's you could be the poster child for the value of not specializing.
Yeah.
Just to play the devil's advocate, we're going off speed skating here, but you've piqued my. Do you think, Catriona, there's any of the big broad world of sports, and you're involved in many of them? Is there ever a time for early specialization?
Yeah, it probably depends on the sport. I'm gonna, again, from my limited knowledge, possibly.
I always say gymnastics. I think you need to, Catriona.
Well, I was gonna say gymnastics, diving. They also come from sort of the same sport. Yeah, they peak early. And people might disagree, but swimming lately, they peak early, especially the women.
And I have no idea why that is. I want to find someone that knows more about physiology than me to explain that to me. I find that very peculiar, Catriona.
Well, I think I mean, fair or not, again, I'm just saying this from a personal side. I feel like they burn out a little bit. That's a very tough sport, and they are in the pool constantly.
You could be onto something with that.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of burnout, not just physically, but mentally, and injuries. I mean, a lot of their shoulders just from repetition. It's a tough sport, and when they do competitions, I mean, they're not doing just one event. They often do multiple events, plus relays, plus round robin of so many. That's a lot. And I don't believe, and this is where I learned early on, it's not just the physical side. Mentally,
the mental. You just get sick of the damn thing.
And I learned when I was in university, and you might like, well, no, you'll like this. I'd always heard about people, when you're studying, it's like you get that craving to bake a cake and you want to eat the whole thing. And I was told early on by a physiologist that's because your brain takes 80% of the glycogen. So when you're studying, you actually should carbo load. So I realized early on that mental stress, it it sucks everything from our being. And so I've often told young athletes, when you're stressed out, when you have school and sport or a big competition coming up, feed the brain. You feed your body, but you need to feed the brain, and so many of us do not do that.
You're right, Catriona. Homo sapiens are unique in that way. Our brains take up a disproportionate amount of energy because we're more intelligent. But you are correct. It's an
I'm probably
interesting.
going in so many different
Oh, it's all
tangents. Sorry.
fascinating, though. It's also interesting. But that being said, let's move forward in time here.
Okay.
And we've already laid a good foundation for how you got to being at the level of the Olympics, no small feat, and you did it through a combination of obviously practicing the sport of speed skating. But let me just reiterate again, folks, she was a track athlete. And if I may say, I get worked up sometimes. I meant to reemphasize this, Katrina. I think track itself, to be honest with you, like all these hockey players when they finish their hockey in the spring, or name the athlete, it could probably be a good idea. Learning how to run fast, like it applies to every sport almost that involves, well, running fast. So take some time out of your calendar year and learn how to do that. Practice doing that, which is what track is. Run fast. And if you're like you throw things as well, but that's all right. So let's move forward, okay? So Catriona Le May Doan, she's now been at the Olympics, not once but twice. Canada Games, very very successful athlete. However, it's not. We're going to bring it up to. We'll call it the Nagano years. Okay, the Nagano years.
Mm-hmm.
And leading up to Nagano is when you really become not just pretty good, not just like I'm fifth in the world type of thing. Fifth in the world. That's okay. Like people are not thinking, okay, this is the girl. This is now she's the
Mm-hmm.
elite of the elite. Catriona, I'd like to talk about the training,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Leading up to, let's call it the Nagano years. Uh, Broadly, let's talk about the training. Maybe we'll talk about some other things as we go along here, but talk about maybe when in this period you got really, really good and what the training was like that enabled you to get
Mm-hmm.
not just pretty good, but like now she's the best. The
Mm-hmm.
training.
Yeah, I mean, it's built up, right? You don't just train 1 year. Um, we talk in quads because our physiologists honestly have the hardest job because they're scientists and they design a program. I mean, our physiologist was brilliant and he looked at the 4 year plan at the quad and said, okay, this is where we want to peak this year, this is where we want to peak this year, and designed a 4 year program so that we would have peaks every year, culminating hopefully at the Olympic Games. And then individualizing those programs for what I needed versus what my teammate needed. Um, so the base continues to build, which is why post games in that first year of the quad, you do a lot more volume because your body will continue to benefit from it. But again, we had the easy job because the spring and summer was a lot of volume because you need that base. And then as you get closer to competition time, especially being a sprinter, you start to dial the amount back, but the intensity up.
Let me just
Again, so you
let's
can.
be more specific if we can. So you say
Sure.
in the early phases of volume, like how many days a week are you training?
Well, it was
This
always
volume
five.
period, this
Well, it was always 5 to 6 days, and people always
on the
said,
ice, you mean? You're talking on the
"No,
ice. Oh
no,
no, okay.
no." So sort of May until I didn't like going on the ice in the summer. May until August mainly
Here,
was
here.
dry land. Now they do go on the ice, and we would sometimes go on the ice for a training camp, but I like to be off ice a lot. But we would do 1 to 2 sessions. Again, when people say, well, how many hours? It depends, because are you doing it, even though I'm a sprinter, 37 seconds, 38 seconds, you need the volume. So it wasn't about speed of, like, if we went for a 2-hour ride, it was about your heart rate. So you would do the base testing. So I knew from my VO2 what my aerobic heart rate was, what my subaerobic was. And if you don't train at the aerobic, you're never going to build your aerobic.
Sure.
So even though my teammate was a bit faster on the bike, well, I wasn't going to go and keep up with them if that wasn't the right heart rate for me. So you had to be very disciplined. You had to be patient, and you had to understand why you were doing it. And I think that's the problem a lot of times is, people will say, well, instead of going for an hour, I'll go for 45 minutes and go faster. That's actually not doing what it's supposed to do. So it was understanding. And again, I have a curiosity, because I wanted to know. I don't like sciences, but I like understanding them and how it affects me. And so that was what was good. So we would do, again, you can think of we would do base of, running, jogging, cycling. You start to do, we call them imitations. They're like on the grass, but speed skating things. You would do what we used to call fartlicks, which is the change up. People call things
Intervals.
Tabata. What's interesting about Tabata, people don't know this, it was actually named after a Japanese speed skater. Last name was Tabata. So when people talk about Tabata change up, it's actually named from a speed skater. So we would do all the training. We would do hill runs. But again, what are you trying to achieve? Do you do the sprint ones? Do you do 8 times, 3 times 8 times 8 seconds? Or we did the 2-minuters, which train a different system. So that's where I'm saying we had the easy job. They would give us our programs, and then we would do that. They are not easy. And once you get on ice, again, you're building the volume, because what you want is to be able to sustain, even in a 500 meter, which is the shortest distance, which is 37 seconds, you hit lactic acid in your lactate.
100%.
And again, the more of sprinter you have, the higher lactate you can achieve. How does your body sustain that lactate? And so that's what you would train. But we would go 6 days a week with a day off. And, within there, especially once we started on ice, within the 1 or 2 sessions, then you also did the warm-ups, cool downs, you did the physio, you did the hot and cold tubs. We maintain our own skates. So it was a full-time job, but that's what it was.
Yeah. Lots of questions coming out of there, what you just talked about, Catriona. Where do I start? Let me ask you this. You talked about some of the physiology at work. Okay. I'm very interested to know to what degree did an athlete's, let's call it innate abilities, dictate what distance of speed skating they were driven towards? So you mentioned things like VO2 max or whatever thing you might innately have an advantage towards, shall we say, versus the training. Like, did they say, Catriona, you're a sprinter, stick with that. We've identified, like, you seem to be good at this, stick with that. Talk about that, Catriona. The let's call it the genetic contribution to what people do.
Yeah. We can't fight that. People are genetically one way or the other. You can build it. You can build your endurance, but genetically, I don't have a great VO2. I have a good fast twitch. I can produce high lactate. I'm a sprinter. That's it. I can't fight that.
I think sprinters are born, Catriona, is the saying in exercise science.
And as you get older, people develop. You probably lose your fast twitch, and you can develop long distance or endurance. But genetically, if I look at some of our long distance skaters, they have one speed. And I have this, and then I do this. And they're
so interesting.
That's fine. And that's a genetic thing. And when we talk often about why people go into certain sports, and even culture or races, there's a genetic side of how certain people are built. That's just it. I
think, Catriona, if you deny that, you're being willfully ignorant, I think.
Yeah, I also have a long femur. Some people had said, I don't know if this is true, that good speed skaters had a long femur. I don't know. Maybe that is true. But you can't even say a certain size, because if you look back at 98, Jeremy Weatherspoon, my teammate, 6'3", and Shimizu from Japan, who was his biggest competitor, who won the gold in 98, and Jeremy won the silver, was like 5'4". So you can't even say, oh yeah, speed skaters must be tall or must be a
So
certain size.
So that might lead into my next question that I was going to ask you, but it does lead in actually, because although so we talked about the advantage of, like, let's say track and being you were a good runner, you were a good runner.
Yeah.
So there's certain genetic gifts, not gifts, but genetic characteristics that need to be cultivated to be a good speed skater. However, Catriona, somewhat different than just pure running, there is a greater contribution to technique
Yeah.
in speed skating than it's just running, with all due respect to the runners. And I'm not saying there's no technique in running, there is. But I mean, let's be honest, it's clearly different than being a speed skater. My question is, and let's use you as the example.
Okay.
So let's say you were a great sprinter. Best distance was the 500. However, folks, she was also not just competitive, but you were very good at the 1500. And now we're talking a time, Catriona, I forget your time, 2 minutes something in the 1500?
Yeah, better in the 1,000. So
Better than 1,000. But let's put it.
And 15.
It's a continuum. Best at
Oh, yeah, I see what
500.
you mean. Yeah.
Best at 500.
Yeah.
Right? Would you say?
Yeah, for sure.
Also, 1,000. But the longer it gets, the worse. Not worse, but she gets worse, I guess.
Fair. Yeah.
But still very. I forget. Did you set world records in the 1500?
I said it once. Yes.
So you did. So I mean, what can you say about that? And that distance is like 2 minutes and something.
Yeah.
So even though you're let's call you a sprinter, you can negotiate being at one point the world record holder in the freaking 1500. My question is, to what degree does the techniques of speed skating play into that?
Yeah.
And maybe talk about some of the techniques of just, I know that's too broad a topic to tackle quickly, I know, but the technique of the skating, the turning, the edges, I mean, talk about the technique of speed skating, Catriona.
Technique for sure makes a difference, because at the end of the day, the person who is first, second, or third, we've got hundreds of seconds between them. What makes one person better than the other? A combination of everything. It's dealing with the pressure at that moment. It's the discipline of keeping your brain, technique, but technique for sure is a huge part. And that's repetition, right? Like I could say there's no room for error in a 500 meter, and there isn't, but there's always an error, because there's never been a perfect race, and there never will be a perfect race. So it's who has as close to a perfect race as possible.
On those conditions, on that ice. Yeah.
But the thing is that, technique is huge, and that takes discipline as well. It takes reviewing video, you're right. Like it's those little things that makes people successful. It's the extra amount of studying. It's that, but then knowing when enough is enough, and you need to park it, and you need a break mentally.
Wow. So last question about the technique.
Okay.
In general, the workouts. Okay. Clearly, part of the purpose of working out, you're trying to elicit, I'm going to call it a physiological adaptation. I'm going to try to get really fast. But were there ever workouts that you did, Catriona, where you said, okay, the purpose of this, we're not just pushing. What we're doing here, we're working on this. This is the speed skating crossover, if you can't tell. Like we're just working on technique, purely technique. Again, to go back to gymnastics, to use that sport as an example, there were times when you might say to the gymnast, "Oh, how long were you there for?" I worked out for 4 hours, but but it wasn't 4 hours of training physiologically. I'm trying to get my arm in the right position because it's so technical. So my question would be, how much of this training block that we're talking about, like how often would you just do purely technical types of workouts?
You can only do the pure technical on the ice. So we did it probably less than some other sports, because you would build the capacity off the ice, but then you want to be able to handle the So you want the technical part in slow
Right.
motion. So you would do
Yeah.
some slow things, but then you have to be able to handle that technique and have that technique while fatigued. So then you
Mm.
can only do that a certain amount. So there is a fine line because you don't want to overdo technique while you're exhausted and do the wrong things because then you get wrong habits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'll tell you
Such a
one quick
such a
story,
balancing
which
act.
from
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
physiological side you might find fascinating, which a lot of people don't know. So I did track and field for a number of years. The year when I finally did not do track and field, so I had done what I wanted to achieve, I took 6 weeks off. So I was 20, 23 or 24. I can't remember if it was 94 or 95. I took 6 weeks off. I ended up growing a centimeter and a half, and my feet grew half a size. And my physiologist was thrilled because at the time he was
Yeah.
doing a study on rest and the growth hormone.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
I've done every drug test. I will continue to do them. And he said, no, your body is finally rested and
Yeah.
finishing growing. And so I think
Yeah.
for athletes to understand that when we don't allow our body enough rest time, our body
Yeah.
doesn't finish growing. We don't give
Yeah.
it that capacity to
Yeah.
rest and grow.
Yeah. That's a fantastic story. I had heard that story of yours, by the way. So say it
Okay.
again. You're how old? 20?
23 or 24.
She's 23, folks, and her feet grow.
Mm-hmm.
The
And
skates
I
are too
grow
small
in
now,
height.
and
Yep,
and she grows in height
yep.
at the age
Everything
of
is too
23
small.
because and it makes perfect sense physiologically. You're doing
Yep,
so much training, Catriona,
yep,
and your body's saying, "Okay, we're just trying to fuel all this training."
yep,
Oh, she stopped. Let's divert the resources and away. Yeah, that is a great story, and it does speak, like you say, to the value of recovery. Now,
yep.
what a segue that is, Catriona. What a segue to this question. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. So I'm a registered dietitian by trade. If you met me at a party and say, hey, what do you do? I say I'm a registered dietitian. So I'd like you just to talk about just nutrition in general.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're talking about this training for speed skating, and I do want you to be honest, Catriona,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of these athletes, again, and this is I might venture to bet, if I may be so bold to say, it's improved as the years have gone by. But maybe back, years ago, the answer might be we didn't pay that much attention to it. Whatever you have to say again, I
Mm-hmm.
think is very,
Yep,
very interesting.
yeah.
So we're training for
Mm-hmm.
Nagano, okay?
Yep.
The quads coming up. We talked about all the enormous physical training you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
If someone said talk about nutrition in the world of
Yep.
speed skating, what
Yep.
comes to mind?
Yeah, we had a nutritionist who was a resource to us. Um, I never used them. I ate well, um, but I never did like my mom always said, everything in moderation. But what we did physiologically is we tested ourselves. So we got tested. I mean, we knew, and it was, when people do the fat muscle test, it depended if you were like right here or right here. We had the same person do every one of our tests, super intense. We knew for each one of us this the milliliter size of our legs on where we were optimal. So
Wow.
in 2001, no, 2000, my legs got too big. My volume of milliliter of muscle was too big. It was just over the edge of where I lost that fast twitch.
Hang on. So too
So,
big based on like they have a track record of your like best performances type thing.
yeah,
That's what they're basing it
yeah,
against.
yeah. So
So how'd
we
your legs
knew
get too big? How did that happen?
we did more in the weight room, but
You did
that
more
was
in the weight
also
room.
to do with nutrition. So we
Sure.
monitored everything to the point of like, percentage of fat. But we also know that like people get consumed with weight. Muscle weighs a lot. So we never looked at weight. We looked at percentage. But again, when you're doing high volume, you need a little bit more fat because you need that buffer. Otherwise, your body will start to consume the muscle. So as we got closer to competition time, so we would really monitor that. But you'll love this one from a nutritionist standpoint. I knew we would get our blood tested all the time, and your blood tells you everything. Your blood tells you if you're stressed, overtrained. So I knew, and I have a very good sense of when I'm gonna when I'm stressed out, when I'm gonna snap. But I knew when I was exhausted
Mm.
because you know what? I craved fat. I
Really?
wanted McDonald's
Really?
morning, noon, and night when I was past the point of good fatigue. So
Yeah.
I would know it, we would do my blood, and then we'd back off a little bit because I
Yeah.
craved fat. So,
Makes perfect sense from the point of view of evolution.
yeah.
We would have evolved that way.
It's like, it was fascinating, but I ate a bit of everything. But here's the thing. If I craved McDonald's, rather than sitting there every day going, oh, I really want it, I would go and have it.
Mm-hmm.
I would have my craving. All right, put that to rest. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it wasn't like I was lacking of the training, and it wasn't, now in my life, if I crave McDonald's, I'm sorry, I can't have it because the world is different. My body is different. But
Tell me about
um,
it.
we we had a bit of everything. Like, I didn't. There was, like, everything. I
Mm-hmm.
like my routines. I love my porridge in the morning, my Quaker oats, like, where you actually make it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what I loved before I raced.
Mm-hmm.
So I had certain things that I liked, but yeah, I kind of, we had options to work with a nutritionist, but I didn't really need that.
You didn't need that. Okay, let's finish up this part of the story.
Okay.
Nagano Olympics. Catriona, how'd you do?
I did well. Lots of pressure, but I
Wait
ended
a
up
second.
with
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
gold.
whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
Hang on now. There's no pressure yet. Is
Oh, there
there?
is pressure going
There is
in.
pressure? Yeah, but
Yep.
I'm being somewhat
Yeah.
facetious because I know we're getting to even more pressure, folks. We haven't got to that part of
Right.
the story yet.
Yeah.
That's why you got to stick around for the whole thing. But even in Nagano,
Hmm.
you said pressure.
Yeah, I mean, our team was ranked number one in the world going in. I'd fallen in '94, and then going into Nagano, I'd been winning all the World Cups. My teammate was ranked number two. So the pressure was, you know, you should win,
You should
but
win.
But I also knew that anything could happen because it's sport. You never know what's going to happen until the last second.
And it happened to you last Olympics.
Exactly. It happens in every sporting event. So
Yeah.
there was pressure for sure, but ended up coming out with the gold in that 500 meter and then the bronze in the 1,000.
Fantastic. Well done. And at this point now, I think, is when the name Catriona Le May Doan is now, how do I put it? Well, not quite an, I don't want to, I don't want to butter you up too much, Catriona. Not quite an icon yet, but now she's an Olympic champion after
Yeah.
Nagano. Okay, so she did mention the pressure, and
Hmm.
I was being facetious when I said there's no pressure, Catriona, because I know where the story's headed here. So wait, let me
Hmm.
just recap very, very quickly. Lillehammer 94. She's supposed to do okay, but she falls and has a very um, uh, she called it the lowest moment of her career. 4 hard years of training, as we talked about Nagano, and now she is an Olympic champion. Let's just jump right forward to the Salt Lake Games now, Catriona. And you mentioned this funny word, pressure. Is there pressure in Salt Lake? Let's talk about some of the sports psychology
Hmm.
and talk about some of the things you were feeling leading up to Salt Lake. Actually, before you
Hmm.
do that, because I don't want you to be bragging, okay? Let me read out, folks, the situation for this woman heading into Salt Lake, and she's going to talk to you about how that made her feel. So, going into Salt Lake, you're the flag bearer for Canada, walking into the stadium. Uh, this might be a typo if this is correct. You had won 15 out of 16 previous races at the 500 distance.
Hmm.
What happened in the 16th, Catriona?
I don't even
I'm,
know. Again,
I'm
I don't know
joking.
about
Don't answer.
that.
So there's pressure on you in Salt Lake, not the least of which is you're defending Olympic gold medalist, the flag bearer going in. Correct me if I'm wrong. Nobody had defended a gold medal, I don't think, for Canada. Is that right?
Never. In an individual sport, nobody
In
had
an
ever
individual
done it,
sport,
male
no
or
one had ever
female.
done it, male or female. Anyway, I've talked enough. Talk about the sports psychology now we're talking about,
Hmm.
dealing with pressure like you experienced
Hmm.
heading into Salt Lake Olympics, Catriona.
Yeah, I mean, again, that was the most pressure I'd ever felt because there's this flag jinx of carrying the flag nobody had ever defended. I mean, you're talking 100 years, summer, winter games. Nobody had ever done it for Canada. Um, so your statisticians will not like me, but stats mean a certain thing, but throw them out the window. Because stats are meant, right? Like,
That's great. I'm not a stats guy. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. You're like, perfect. You can say that. But it's true. I
Sure.
mean, we do get involved
Because
in
we're
like,
human beings, Catriona, for goodness sake.
yeah, but we
No one can put
do.
you on the line on the Olympic Games, and I mean, okay, the stats are what they are, but a human being has to implement the stats here in this moment with
Yeah, and
emotions
I
and
mean,
feelings.
and I'm not going to pick on hockey, but my son plays hockey, but I mean, you get every stat thrown like how many how many teams, every stat. Well, at the end of the day, like, and again, team sports, you go, oh, this should be not be as difficult a game. Who cares who you're playing? You still need to execute. So at the end of the day, I was ranked number one going into the games, but you
By a
need
good
to
bit.
perform. What's that?
I said by a good bit.
By a
Like
good
heavily
bit.
favored. Heavily favored.
But that means nothing because you must perform in the moment.
Sure.
So
And how long is the moment?
37 seconds.
37
Yeah.
seconds
So
for 4 years of
it's
work.
yeah, I mean, so you can prepare mentally as much as you want, but nothing can mimic an Olympic Games. You understand it's the same 500-meter race, and you can have a World Cup, you can have a World Championship at that same oval, but it's different. An Olympic Games is different. And especially in North America where and in Canada where we only watch the Olympics. In the Netherlands, I mean, Jeremy
They
Weatherspoon, who was my
they
teammate, who won
they
a
love their
silver
speed
medal,
skating.
he is like when I had my daughter in 2004, I had to go in the hospital under a fake name because the Dutch media were hounding us so much. Like that's how big we are,
Really?
bigger than NHL players in the Netherlands.
Really?
Yes, like bigger than the NHL is here, we are bigger in the Netherlands.
Wow.
So there doesn't I mean, they still want to succeed at the Olympics, but even if they don't, they have, achieved greatness.
Hmm.
So not that it's going to come with a dollar figure or anything, but that's what your goal is. So was there pressure? Yes. And I don't think, and this is where it's hard. I'll give you a couple things on this, which I'm going in every direction,
I'd
but
love to hear them. Give me the couple. Give me as many as
um,
you have.
so nothing will ever mimic that pressure. I will never feel that pressure. Stress, yes, like my fear is always, my kids getting ill and sick. And, if that happens, and I've had friends have it happen too, nothing will compare to that. But the pressure at the moment, I will never have that again in my entire life, ever again.
Hmm.
And I'm glad.
Few
I don't
would.
like it.
You
Pardon
don't
me?
like it. I said
No,
few people would have that type of pressure, I think.
no, exactly. Which is why I'm going to go in a bit of another direction. And people can take this as they want. I would say 95% of high performance athletes who have been married, relationships struggle with high performance athletes
Hmm.
because there's a level, I think, of a partner never understanding exactly what they go through.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I've had many conversations with many athletes about that.
Wow.
And I don't know what it is. I've talked to my good friend Scott Russell. I've said, you need to do a feature on this. He goes, no, when you're ready, you need to do a feature on this. So there's a
Sign
challenge
me
for
up to
your
watch that.
students.
Wow. But
And
I
I
think
think
you're
just
right.
because, yeah, it's statistics are not in the favor, but
It
it's
manifests,
just that
yeah.
pressure. And it took me probably 10 years to actually understand, and I would say 10 years to actually understand exactly how tough that situation was. And it actually
Hmm.
was Adam Vancouverden in 2004 watching his race in at his home club, and I realized that was difficult because he was supposed to be the next person
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
to defend. No, it was
Yeah,
2008. I'm sorry, 2008.
yeah.
That was he was to be the next person to defend. So it was 6.5 years later.
Let me ask you this, Catriona. Again, I'm going to play
Yeah.
the devil's advocate.
Okay.
And I don't know, whatever you come up with would be interesting.
Yep.
So you previously said you're very internally driven.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Everything is internal, which
Yeah.
I believe 100%. I'm kind of the same way, to be honest. Despite the fact you're so internally driven, or should I say, because of the fact you're so internally driven, would it not, in theory, be possible to kind of say to the outside pressure, F this, I don't care what you people think,
Mm-hmm.
it's all in here.
Mm-hmm.
You would think someone who's internally driven might have an advantage in doing that, if you see what I'm saying. I don't care about
Mm-hmm.
the world. The world's
Yep.
of no interest to me.
Yep.
I'm internally driven.
Yep.
But yet it wasn't for you. You can be two things at the
Mm-hmm.
same time.
You are two things at the same time.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Because this is where the battle happens. And this is why pressure and stress is so exhausting. Because 1 second, I've got this. I'm good. Just follow my game plan. Next second, oh my goodness, I want to. Oh, okay, next second. You just go back and forth and back and forth. And you can say you don't care, but you do care because you
Hmm.
want to succeed. And why do you want to succeed? Because you want to achieve that. But I also wanted to make my parents proud, and I wanted to make my country proud, and I wanted to do this, and I
Sure.
wanted to achieve this. But at the end of the day, do I know that it doesn't make a difference to who the person is? 100%. But I still want that. And
Hmm.
do I know how to achieve it? Yes, but it's still implementing it. So literally became a minute by minute. I can do this. Oh my goodness, I don't know. Okay. Exhausting. Absolutely exhausting. And that's why I say for people focusing, and again, whether it's sport, presentation, whatever it might be, you must focus. And then at some point, you have to be able to park it.
Hmm.
And that time, and that's whenever things are stressful for me, I have I'm going to say my crap books and my crap movies because I need to not think.
You just need to
And
disconnect.
yep, and you
Yeah.
need to figure out how you disconnect.
Yeah.
And that's where I've really learned, um, even day to day now, when I know that I'm nearing an edge, I
Hmm.
know I need to take a half day or a day off and I need to go do something away from, like, I need to go hike or go do something that reinvigorates whatever it
Yeah.
is for me. But you know what? People don't take the time to figure themselves out about
Hmm.
how you figure that out.
Yeah. Catriona, the way I heard it phrased one time is human beings, we can suffer for a while, and some of us can suffer more than others. And I bet you, because I know what you went through, well, I don't know, but you're an Olympic
Mm-hmm.
athlete, you put up with a lot of suffering. So
Mm-hmm.
your threshold is probably higher than most, I'm going to venture to bet.
Yep. Yep. I
But
would agree.
there is nobody walking this earth that can suffer forever.
Yeah.
And you need to disconnect at some point,
Yeah.
like you said.
For
Very
sure.
interesting. Let me just keep talking about this Salt Lake, eh?
Sure.
The psychology is very interesting to me. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, again, to reset up the story. So she's the Olympic champion, trying to defend a gold medal. No one's ever done this. Flag bearer, all this pressure. Then things start going badly for Canada,
Yeah.
Catriona. So we have, all right, before Catriona Le May Doan skates, guess how many medals Canada has won? I think Nagano was our highest ever at that point. Is that right? We had won more medals in
Again,
Nagano?
statistics,
Okay.
I'll trust you.
Okay, anyway, we had a great Nagano. People saying we're great
Yeah.
at Canada. We're going to be even better in Salt Lake. Uh, Before Catriona skates, we have won this many, doing very, very badly. There's a fiasco which some fans of a certain ilk or an age, Catriona will remember, a fiasco with the two figure skaters,
Yeah.
Soleil and Pelche. All that happened. I remember
Yeah.
watching that, man. I was at Lakehead
Yeah.
University, Catriona,
Russian
in
Russian
residence.
judges.
People could not believe this. Folks, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go look this up. It is
Yeah.
fantastic. It's compelling. It's drama. It's a soap opera. There
Oh
was a
yeah.
girl in our residence who was like a figure skater.
Mm-hmm.
And she watches Soleil and Pelche skate, and she's like, well, that's the gold medal. That's
Yeah.
the gold medal performance.
There's
And then
always
these
some
friggin'
drama.
judges.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's you can't make up this drama. All this is happening, Catriona. Okay, I'm telling stories here. Your buddy, who you mentioned, Jeremy Witherspoon, skates before you,
Yeah.
gold medal
Expected to
favorite.
win. Oh yeah. Expected to win.
Tell us
Everybody
what happened
said
to him.
he's got the gold.
What happened to him?
He took 3 steps off the line and fell flat on his face. Yeah. So all of a sudden it's like, oh boy, the world
But
is
not
not.
even, but not even
Somebody
like you.
said the stars are not aligned.
Yeah. And when
That's
his fall, Catriona, again, for non-aficionados of speed skating, his fall was different than your fall in
yeah,
Lillehammer.
yeah.
Like
It was weird.
you're going around a turn, and you could at
Yeah,
least theoretically see how you might lose an edge and wipe out.
yeah.
Try to articulate like the outrageous unlikelihood of that happening, of the fall like he had.
I it was just one of those things. I mean, it was just weird, like because it was the clap skate. He literally rolled off, but he'd never done it, never did
No,
it again. It was just one of those weird things. Why? Who knows? But yeah, it was. Our things were not going well.
no. On the topic of not going well, let me keep telling my story. So the way, correct me if I'm wrong, how at least it was in Salt Lake, you skate the 500 twice, right?
Hmm.
Which is also interesting physiologically. Like you have two races and they're 24 hours apart.
24 hours apart. Yeah. Now they do it the same day, which I would have loved.
They do? I did not. It's the same
Yep.
day, eh? Oh,
Yeah,
that's
because they
also
needed more of the
fascinating.
schedule. Oh, I would have loved that. Yeah.
You would have loved that. Well, we're getting there because I
Okay.
was going to say, well, the way I had it set up to ask the question, you skate the first 500,
Hmm.
you're in first place.
Not by much.
Folks, that's such a telling answer. Sh She's in first. Did you say you were a perfectionist at one point earlier, about an hour ago, I think?
Yeah.
She's in
Hmm.
first place. Her answer here today, not that much. I was just going to say, how you feeling at this point?
Um, Frustrated, but the story that hits me on that first day, because I don't, Saturday morning race, World Cup, I always expect this level. And so I'm still at this level. The problem is those who thrive on that environment have gone to this level. So I don't want to go through the media mix zone, even though we'd agreed that we weren't going to do media in between. I just didn't want them to see me because I was upset. One of my,
She's in first place, folks, in case that wasn't clear.
but not with the buffer that I wanted. This was the thing. I wanted it easy.
I
That
know, I
I,
know. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but that's the reality. I
Sure.
wanted it easy because that's how it had been all year. Um, One of my competitors who ended up winning the bronze medal overall, I'll never forget. She came up to me, crouched down in front of me. She looked at me and she said, "Tomorrow you're going to be better." I'm like, I still think about that moment and
That's
I'm
a
like,
crazy story.
well, this was how we were all, we wanted the best from everybody because we wanted to push each other. She didn't
Wow.
want to
But
win a medal
Catriona,
because I failed. And
wow.
that was the beauty of our competitors
That is beautiful.
is, yeah.
She
And,
didn't want to
and
beat you. She wanted to beat you on your best day.
yes. And
Wow.
when we would go to the line and say, have a good one, it wasn't like yeah, have a good one, hope you mess up. No, it was
Mm,
have a good one so that you push me.
wow.
And I will never forget that. And I was like, she didn't have to do that.
No.
And to me, has always been the example of the most beautiful competitor
Yep.
because she knew that I was frustrated.
That's a hell of a story.
Yeah. And yeah. And she, again, it didn't change things physically, but it was like, no, we know it in a way it was the reassurance that I know that wasn't your best race. You will be better. But
Wow.
you still have to perform. At the end of the day, you have to perform. And
Yeah.
it it just shows also, what I always say to people is we are responsible. We need to take accountability. Because I didn't have my best race, that was nobody else. That's me performing. And as much as you are out there as a team, whatever people do in actions, you take accountability. And again, this goes to a little bit of our society nowadays. We're not accountable enough. Call yourself out, not just other people. Call yourself out when you're not good enough. That's it.
What a revolutionary idea, Catriona. But I agree 100%. Everything is someone else's fault.
Yeah,
The world's out to get me.
yeah,
I deserve more. Anyway, I could go on and on.
yeah.
You're barking up the right tree on that one. Anyway, let's finish our story. I'm sensitive of your time. You've been so generous to even to give me any of your time. I greatly appreciate it. But you've raced the first race in Salt Lake. There is a second race. Um, you're leading after the first race, but you got to skate twice to win the gold. Just take us through that sequence of
Hmm.
events, Catriona, talk us about, and folks, you know where this is going. She does, of course, defend the gold medal, but just talk about the second race and knowing that
Hmm.
now you're a double Olympic gold
Yeah,
medalist.
I don't really remember a ton of the race, but I do remember the last probably 30 meters. I knew peripherally that I was ahead enough
Hmm.
that I would defend it. And if I can describe anything on the race, what I do remember is crossing the line, knowing that I had defended. And the biggest feeling I had was relief. It
Mm.
was like, okay, we did it. And it's the
Relief,
fact that you
not
you
jubilation. Your emotion. You describe. You say relief.
that was the first feeling was
Wow.
relief. I will
Hmm.
never forget crossing the line and feeling relief that it had been done.
Wow.
And then obviously, and what was great was I actually had it was a bit of a mess up with actually with doping and drug testing that we didn't end up doing our medal ceremony until the next day, which was a blessing in disguise because it you had time for it to sink in a little bit. And it was down at a Metals Plaza. It wasn't in the Oval like in Nagano. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's when it those moments don't hit you still. Again, as I said, it was years later because it's 23 years of coming to that 37 seconds. You things don't hit you.
Yeah. Wow.
They don't.
Anyway, Catriona, unbelievable stories, unbelievable athletic career. Uh, if you have time,
Hmm.
just to tie things up, we can still learn some more from you, by the way, if you want to
Hmm.
voluntarily play 10 questions.
I will voluntarily play. Can I just add one thing? When you
Yes.
said great career,
Yeah.
again, I go back to, and this is from my mom, that's fine, whatever you achieve. But what really makes success is what are you going to do with it afterwards? It doesn't matter what you achieve on the field of play or in the boardroom or in the classroom or in anywhere in a business. You don't take that stuff with you. So what are you going to do with it? To me, that's how you define success.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And
But yes,
folks,
I'll play.
Well, listen, I'm not even making this up, folks. You think I'm making this up? You think Catriona and I could conspire together before we set? We did not. My first question, you're not going to believe what the first question is.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, by the way, this might be again. I'm building this up. This might be the best 10 questions ever. Just looking
Okay.
at the list of questions. But in
Okay.
all seriousness, Catriona, in all seriousness, the first of the 10 questions, I'm being very honest, was talking about your post-athletic career.
Hmm.
And just I was going to get you to say the way I phrased it here, although this seems to under emphasize the way you just described it. But my question number one of 10, Catriona, was what is the coolest thing you've done post athletic career?
Okay.
And there's many to
Um,
choose from. I mean, I don't know what we could even go
yeah,
with.
but coolest, most emotional Olympic moment, which is to
Okay.
me also the coolest.
Yeah, yeah.
October 30th, 2009, Simon Whitfield and I lighting the very first torch and being the first members of the
Wow.
torch relay for 2010. I was not
Wow.
ready for that. I didn't know what to expect.
Why was
It
that?
hit me like a
Why
ton
was
of
that
bricks
so
because
emotional?
everything he felt, I believe Simon felt the same. Everything we've ever done, we prepared, right? Like as much
Yeah,
as the pressure of the games, we had no idea what to expect. Like we don't know where are we going? What's going to happen? What's the crowd going
sure.
to be like? So it was the not being prepared and the power of being that close to the actual Olympic flame and the
Hmm.
power that the Olympic flame had in the 100 meters that we took it beyond belief the most powerful Olympic moment ever.
That is a really cool story. Wow, that emotional, eh? Wow, that's a great answer. Let me just throw out some others. Again, I'm
Okay.
not trying to butter you up too much, Katrina. Chef de mission.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, let's do a few bonus. Tell us, what is a chef de mission?
Yeah, it's the
What
leader
is
of the
that?
team.
People don't know what that is, really.
Yeah, it's the leader of the team. It's a volunteer position. There's a chef de mission for every team, for every Olympics and Paralympics, and we are the one nation who does it. That it's an Olympian or Paralympian who's chef de mission. that became my goal. And I actually, something you might not know, maybe you do know it, I had always said I would never get the Olympic rings tattoo until I was chef de mission.
Hang up. I did know that, and I can tell you where it is. It's on your forearm.
It is on my forearm, yes. But I got it 8 weeks before Beijing for 2022. So I got it in December of 2021. And it was kind of cool because my mom had always, like I said, never said that medals made people, and she was near end of life. So I was able to sort of show her the power of giving back and being a leader of the team, which was really cool. And it was COVID games, so people couldn't have their mums there. So I was the mum to 224 athletes.
Wow. My goodness. So many good stories, Catriona. What's coming up in St. John's this summer? I got to give a shout out to St. John's. I'm from Newfoundland, by the way.
Are you? From where?
South of St. John's.
Okay.
If you drive south, you'll pass my small little town.
Okay. So
there's one road.
Okay.
So anyway,
I might go on it. Canada Games are there in August, and I will be there for almost the entire month. And as chair of Canada Games Council, I'm so excited. I've been involved in Canada Games for 42 years.
Giving back, Catriona. Giving back. Anyway, look, that's only one question. We got a few bonus questions there. I'm very sensitive to your time. I won't keep you any longer. You're so good to do any of this with me. I appreciate it. But so many great post-athletic career stuff. All right, question number 2, Catriona. What's the best thing about being Scottish?
It's not haggis.
Have you ever had haggis? Did they eat haggis? Did you eat a haggis when you were a childhood?
I don't like any of that. We ate weird food, trust me. But it's the fact that I have a weird name. My Scottish cousins have all normal names, but I have a Scottish name. I love it.
The name. That's a good answer. Question number 3. Hypothetical situation, Catriona. If the Grey Cup semifinal next year is between the Calgary Stampeders and the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who are you cheering for?
I have blue earrings in. I always wear my green. I bleed green, so there you go. That's all I can say.
I didn't know what you were going to answer for that. I thought she might feel not so good about that. Okay, these are fantastic, as I knew they would be. You've already kind of talked on this, but I think this is so good, I'm going to ask it again anyway. I'm going to give a quote from you, okay?
Okay.
And I'll just elaborate more, because this is important stuff. Quote is something along these lines. When I reach a peak in my training, in other ways, I'm at my worst.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting understanding the context, but
I don't know the context, to be honest, but anyway.
Yeah, but the thing is that's when you hit the highest level of fatigue. And so you become most vulnerable. And that's where people can only draw on others in strength when you are at your worst, because you need the people that you can be vulnerable around.
It's pretty deep. Pretty deep. Okay, question number 5. Back to the world of sports science. I was going to get you, Catriona, to talk about the differences in short track speed skating versus long track speed skating. And we're going somewhat quickly here, but my question is going to be not what are they, but what makes an athlete one or the other? Is the difference more physiological things, or is it psychological things? Is it technique things? Something else besides those 3 factors? Differences in short track versus long track speed skating.
We grew up doing both, and a lot of skaters still do. I did Canada Games and short track. Personality also, because you're way more in control in long track, and I couldn't handle that somebody could dictate the outcome of my race in short track. I couldn't have done that. People compare it more to
roller derby.
Well, yeah, but if you look at alpine, we're the alpine.
Okay.
And short trackers are more the snowboarders, and that's that's kind of the
in terms of the personality. Yeah. I get you. All right, question number 6. Best story about skating in the cold. you could draw upon several things here. Catriona
Yeah,
began her career, by the way, folks. They skated outdoors at the Olympics
yeah.
once upon a time. I don't know if
I
there's anything, that was a
yeah.
romantic thing, I think. I kind of enjoyed that. I don't know if you have any good stories or just growing up in Saskatchewan, best
Yep.
story skating in the cold.
I cannot ever forget, and I can't explain the sound of a speed skate on cold ice outside in minus 35 degrees. The sound
Hmm.
is kind of beautiful.
It's poetic.
Yeah.
I don't know speed skating, but I can compare it, Catriona, to the hockey rink,
Yep.
6 o'clock in the morning when there's nobody else on the. It is magical. I'm sure you would find the same thing in your sport. Question number 7. Here's another fantastic question. More of a psychological thing again. Catriona, what were you thinking when, I'm reading my exact words, okay? What were you thinking when that effing mechanical arm at the opening ceremony of the Vancouver Olympics does not come down?
I was thinking, why is it mine and not Gretzky's?
Enough said. You go Google that, people. Look at that. That was a great thing. Why
Exactly.
is it mine and not Gretzky's? That's a good answer. All right, we're almost done. Question number 8. Here's a question. Every person gets asked this. You're like everybody else, Catriona. You get asked this question. Please tell us, what is your personal best 1 rep max bench press?
I have no clue. I
That
don't
that
know. And I was a
that
speed skater, so it wasn't very high. I have no clue.
that is not the first time that answer was given, by the way.
Okay, good.
Any answer counts. We only have 2 left. Both these are fantastic. Question number 9. I think Catriona, Canada would love to hear your answer for this. I'm simply going to ask you to talk about short haircuts.
I had one, and I don't know if I'll have one again.
No, because this was your trademark. She was rocking the short haircuts. I should. I'm looking at myself here, Catriona. I should take that advice. I think I need a haircut. Look at this.
Yeah, mine's tied up. I don't think mine will be short again.
I need to have a short one. My mother's gonna hate this. Look at this. Anyway, enough about me. Let's move on. Last question, Catriona. We talked about everything under the sun here today, except for one thing. So we'll
Hmm.
say this to the end. Why not, eh? Let's talk about religion. Why not
Yeah.
talk about religion? We talk about everything else. They say there's a few things you're not supposed to talk about. This is one of them, I think. But anyway, let's talk about it anyway. Actually, and I'm gonna even put you on the spot further than
Okay.
Catriona, because I was thinking, what could I ask her about it? Here's how I'm going to phrase this.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear I'd honestly love to hear what you think. Anything you think. So, okay, let me set the stage, folks. Catriona and I are proudly members of Generation X. I think you're proudly. I am proudly the best
Yeah.
generation.
It's so confusing.
We're the best generation that's still
Okay.
active in the world.
Perfect.
Anyway, the millennials or the generation after us, Catriona,
Yeah.
they left the church in record numbers. But the newest generation, what we call Gen Z, so the young people of today are
Hmm.
returning
Hmm.
in numbers to the church. You could back this up.
Okay.
I'm sure it's in Ontario. I'm sure it's probably in Alberta as well. So, like I said, people left
Hmm.
after us. The new generation returning. And I don't know what the answer would be, but any thought you might
Hmm.
have as to why that might be, I would find kind of interesting. To the question, people left the church, now they're returning again. I don't know.
Well, people, I think, are searching. So you use the word religion. I don't like the word religion because
Oh,
religion
really,
is
eh?
rules.
Okay,
Religion
I
is
didn't know
rules.
that.
It's about faith.
Okay.
So to me, um, all faiths lead to the same. Though I mean, I'm a Christian and I believe in the Bible, and doesn't mean that you don't question it a lot. But there are certain times that, oh my goodness, even lately, I've questioned things, and oh my goodness, things are thrown in my face going, this is the truth. So I think people are going back to whether it's church or faith, or if you want to use the word religion, because people are searching and people are lost. And, um, to me, it's faith is not a crutch. Faith is what gives you purpose. And that's how it is in my life.
Very illuminating, as I knew it would be, the use of the word faith versus religion. Let me throw one more word, not exactly the same, Catriona, but to tidy up our interview here about sports. Maybe you could use the word sport there as well. Maybe not in the exact same way as faith, but giving people a purpose. People are lost. Maybe through sport, they might be able to help find something they're looking for in their lives, I think.
Well, unfortunately, at every level of government within our nation, sport is not a priority, and yet we know that sport gives us health. If we don't have a healthy self and we don't have a healthy community, we won't have, we won't have inclusion, we won't have sense of belonging. Sport gives that to us. Hopefully you don't base your values on sport, because you are more than your sport, but it can be a part of discovering who you are.
A good part, I think. Wonderful. Okay, on that note, Catriona, let me say for a final time, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for doing this with me here today.
My pleasure. It was lots of fun.
Fantastic fun, as I knew it would be. And in signing off, I will do so as I always do by saying, let's go Canada, support Canadian athletes.
Yes.